It's time for us to check back in with Charles Fletcher and the Panther on Cold Mountain and other stories. If you've missed the previous readings, just look in the description below for a playlist. Today, we're going to finish the story we started last week from Charles about the big fishing trip, the first time him and TJ got to go on an overnight fishing trip. And then we're going to read one of Charles's Christmas stories. I can't believe December is here. When I was reading that last one, I wasn't thinking about December coming so quickly. So I'm going to share a Christmas story with you from Charles. It is not in this book, The Panther on Cold Mountain and Other Stories, but it is from his book. I believe it's from Out West and Back. I believe it's from that book. But many years ago, he sent it to me and let me share it on The Blind Pig and the Acorn, so that's where I'm reading it from today. But I believe it's in that book. I know that he shared it in one of his books, and it's a heartwarming Christmas story. So we'll hear that after we finish the big fishing trip. After a few more comments and instructions, we were in the car and on our way to an unknown part of the world. Although Dad had been to many parts of the country, TJ and I had not been too far from our home. We stopped at John's house and he loaded his stuff in the car. We were soon on the main road, U.S. Route 1923, headed towards Whittier and the river. TJ and I were not missing a thing, as we were in a part of the world that we had never seen before. The road across Balsam Mountains was beautiful. Once at the top, you could see for miles across the tall spruce, balsams, and many other types of trees, even a few chestnuts every now and then. There were many small streams coming down the mountainsides from the springs that came from under a rock cliff or some big tree. As they joined each other, they became larger streams that had the native trout fish in them. Soon we were in the bottomlands and following the river that we were to fish in. Dad pulled the car off the river into a flat space on the riverbank. "Here we are," Jack said. "Where's the town of Whittier?" I asked. "Straight across the river," Jack said. "I don't see any houses or stores over there," I said. "See that swinging bridge down there?" Jack said. "There are several houses over there. You don't see them because they are up in the hollows and coves. The people use the footbridge to get across the river. If they have their wagons loaded with corn to take to the corn mill to have it ground, they go down the river a little ways and cross where the water is only about a foot deep. This is called fording the river. You can also wade across if you watch out for slick rocks. If you step on one, you are sure to fall and get wet all over." Everything for our camp was set. Jack had built a fire, and Dad was getting the pans out to start our supper meal before dark. TJ and I decided to look around a little. There was plenty of wood for the fire, so we were free to do what we wanted to do. We went straight to the swinging bridge. We had never seen anything like this before. We decided to cross the river on the bridge. When we were near the middle, the whole bridge began to swing back and forth. We held tight to the cables on the sides and were soon on the other bank of the river. We had begun to explore the bank of the river when I spotted something moving in the water on the edge of the bank. I got closer to get a good look and saw a great big fish with a string in its mouth. I got closer, and lo and behold, that fish was caught on a bank fishing line. "Let's take him to show Dad and Jack what we caught," I said. "Yeah," TJ said. I untied the line from a small bush and pulled the fish out onto the bank and into the grass. "Sure is a big one," I said. "I don't think I can carry him by myself." We looked around and found a tree limb that was pretty straight and about 4 feet long. We tied the line in the middle, and with TJ on one end and me on the other, we went back across the bridge. We were so excited that we didn't notice the bridge swinging. As we approached the fishing place, we began to holler, "Look what we caught!" Jack and Dad looked around, and one of them said, "My goodness, look at that. Biggest catfish I ever seen. Must be 5 or 6 pounds. They both picked the fish up and took a good look at him. I'll get my knife and a pair of pliers and skin that booger. We'll have fish for supper tonight. Jack began the job of dressing the fish as though he had dressed a catfish before. It didn't take him long until there was a big pan full of fish ready to be cooked. Dad put a big cast iron frying pan on the fire, put some of the large shortening he brought along in the pan, and pretty soon there was a full pan of fish getting ready for our supper. After turning the fish a few times so they were brown on all sides, Dad said, "Jack, get the pork and beans open and some bread from the box in the back seat of the car, and get some of those paper plates. We're about ready to eat." And eat we did. There was enough fish for everyone with a couple of pieces left over. "About the best fish meal I ever had," Jack said. "Me too," Dad said. "Better get things cleaned up. Won't be long before it's dark, and all the light we have is that kerosene lantern we brought for light to fish by tonight." It wasn't long until everything was put in its proper place and we were all fishing. "Where are we going to sleep?" I asked Dad. "We aren't," he said. "We come to catch some fish, not to sleep." I didn't say anything. I was looking around for a good grassy place near the fire. I had never stayed awake all night before, and I didn't plan on starting now. Everything went well. We'd caught a few fish of different kinds, but nothing as big as our catfish. About what I thought was midnight, everything became quiet. Dad and Jack had been sampling their moonshine and were getting sleepy. TJ and I were also ready to find a good place to curl up for the rest of the night. We found a place where the grass was thick and we lay down. We didn't need anything to cover ourselves because it was midsummer and very warm. It was not long until everyone was still. Jack and Dad had also found a sleeping place. We were awakened the next morning when someone hollered, "Get up! The fish are biting and you all are asleep. Get up! The day's half gone." I rubbed my eyes to get a better look at our visitors. There stood two men who looked like they hadn't shaved or had a bath for several weeks or months. Dad was awake now and he asked, "What are you fellas doing here?" "We come to do a little fishing. This is the best fishing hole on the river. You fellers don't care if we join you, do you?" "No," Dad said. "There's room for everybody." Soon everyone was around the fire where Dad was frying some ham and eggs for our breakfast. "You fellers hungry?" he asked our visitors. "Wouldn't hurt none if we did have a bite. I'll cook a couple more eggs then and you can eat with us." Soon breakfast was over. "We are much obliged for the good breakfast," one of the men said. "Glad to have you," Dad said. A little later we were all fishing when we had another visitor drop by. "Howdy," he said. "Catching anything?" "One every once in a while," Jack said. "I'm the game warden in this county. My name is Bob Henderson. You may have heard of me. Everyone in this county says that I'm the best warden they ever had. I catch a lot of outsiders who come here to fish. Can I see your fishing licenses?" TJ and I didn't have to have a license because we were under 12 years old. Dad and Jack showed him their licenses. "How about you fellers?" he said to the other men. "Ain't got any, never had any, and never will. It's a shame you government people are always after more money from us working people. Go away and leave us be." "I'll have to take you to jail if you don't have a license. Come on, I'm taking you in." "You ain't taking us anywhere, so you may as well get going." "I'll go get some help and be back. Both of you will be in jail before the sun goes down today. I'll be back with plenty of help. You stay right here." "You get all the help you want. We ain't going anywhere. We ain't got no money to buy a license and wouldn't if we did. They tell me that you get $1 for everybody you catch. I may get me some of that government money as soon as I get my corn laid by. Got nearly 2 acres planted this year. Yes, sir. Sure keeps me busy on that farm. I may get me one of them government jobs this fall. I hear they're hiring for work on the WPA. Pays real good money, they say. Something like $1 or $2 a day. Seems the government has lots of money. It was easy to see that our newfound friends had been drinking before they came to do some fishing. You fellers have anything to drink, they asked. We have a little left, Jack said. You can have a little drink, but leave some for us. He passed the half-gallon jar to one of them. The man had a drink and handed the jar to the other man. He also took a drink and handed it back to Jack. Guess we better be going before that lawman comes back. Thank you for the eats and the drink. If you fellers are ever back this way, stop and pay us a visit. We live on the other side of the river, about 2 miles down. Better get going now. Along in the evening, the warden came back. He had 2 pretty big men with him. Where are they? He asked. Dad spoke up. They said they got tired of waiting for you to come back, so they left. Said they were going home, wherever that is. You might catch up with them. They went up the road toward Silva. They left without saying anything else. It was getting up in the afternoon and we were tired of fishing, so we began to pack for the trip back home to Canton. We were soon on our way. TJ and I were tired, but we weren't sorry we went on this trip. We had caught some fish in addition to the big catfish, had some good eating, and met 2 local strangers who seemed to be living the life that many of the mountain people of western North Carolina lived. We'd been on a real fishing trip, but for the rest of the summer, we would have to do our fishing on the creek bank that run through the pasture. Now we'll move on to the Christmas one. We would start getting ready for Christmas in the late fall when the chinky pens started opening. We would gather the small chinky pens and let them dry. They would be part of our Christmas tree decorations when the time came to put up a Christmas tree. As Christmas drew near, the 2 churches in our area would begin to get their Christmas programs together. There was the Baptist church that we attended and the Methodist church. They would plan their programs so that everyone could attend both programs. We were all neighbors and we all shared the things that happened in our community. It would be nice if it were the same today. The church leaders would ask the children to do the acting in the Christmas plays. Usually it would be the young girls who acted the parts. We boys were a little shy, and besides, the older boys would tease us if we took part in anything that included girls. Mom began planning what we were going to have for Christmas dinner. This meal was one of the few at which we were to have some sort of meat to go along with the canned beans and the potatoes from the cellar. We would also have sweet potatoes, big biscuits, cat heads, thick milk gravy, and of course one of Mom's special stack cakes. These cakes were made with homemade cane syrup and cooked dried apples. They were about 10 or 12 layers high. If some of our neighbors killed a beef, we would have stew beef for the meat. If we were not having beef, we would eat a goose that we would buy from Bert Robinson. He was the janitor at the Beaver Dam School. The price for a goose was somewhere from 50 cents to $1. It depended on how large the goose was. 1 week before Christmas, it was time to get a Christmas tree. Getting a tree was TJ's, my brother's, and my job. We would get an axe and off to the woods we would go. This was not a very hard job because there were plenty of pines and spruce trees to choose from. The tree had to be about 5 feet tall with plenty of limbs on it. While we were out looking for the Christmas tree, the girls were busy with their job of getting the decorations ready for the tree. They strung the chinky pins using a darning needle and thread. These strings of chinky pins were garlands for hanging on the tree. The girls would make paper rings out of different colored paper that Dad had brought home from the paper mill. These two would be put together to make a paper chain to hang on the tree. Next came a fun part for Mom and the girls. Sometimes TJ and I would help too. We would pop a couple large pans of popcorn and string the popcorn into long strands. After we made the strings of popcorn, we dyed them different colors. This was done by dipping the strands of corn into different natural dyes. We used pokeberry to make a red dye. We made a brown dye from walnut hulls, and we got a green dye from the bark of several trees. After we made and hung all our decorations, we would make a star from cardboard and place it in the top of the tree. Everything was now in place, and we had one of the prettiest Christmas trees in the entire community. Hanging the stockings from the fireplace mantel was not an easy job because we usually didn't wear any socks. We wore our shoes without socks. After searching through the house, we would each find a sock to put above the fireplace, even if it wasn't one of our own. On Christmas Eve, everyone was excited. We would go to bed a lot earlier than usual. Santa Claus could come at any time, and if anyone was up and about in the house, he might fly on by and not stop. We would lie really quiet in bed, listening for the bells on his sleigh. We would try to stay awake as long as we could so that we might hear Santa coming into the house. On Christmas morning, we children were the first ones to get out of bed and go into the sitting room where the tree and our stockings were. Presents would be under the tree. They each had a name on them. The girls opened theirs first. The youngest was first. Inside her package was a pretty new dress and some underwear. Then it was the next girl's turn. Would you believe it? She also had a new dress and some underwear. I don't know if they were store-bought or if Mom had made them from flour sacks. Next, it was time for TJ and me to open our brown paper bags. TJ was first. He had a new pair of denim pants and a blue cotton shirt. Then I opened my bag and I got the same things TJ did, pants and a shirt. We were happy with our gifts. We usually got overalls. We were getting older and we wanted to dress differently than the little boys. Then we went directly to the fireplace to check our stockings. Each one had the same things in it, a couple sticks of candy, an apple, and an orange. The dresses, pants, and shirts were forgotten now. "Don't you kids eat any of that yet," my mother hollered. "You'll spoil your breakfast, and we have a good one this morning." We went to the long wooden table where there were hot biscuits, fried eggs, milk gravy, applesauce, and homemade country sausage that Mom had canned when we killed a hog last fall. This sure was great eating. After breakfast, we went back to our candy. Soon it was dinner time, and we went back to the long table for a special Christmas meal. It would be another year before this would take place again. We were all happy. No one was sick. We had enough to eat, and most of all, we loved each other. We were thankful for what we had. During these hard times in the early 1930s, a lot of people had less than we did. Isn't that a beautiful memory? So pretty. Such a beautiful thought of for Christmas. Just imagining the scene there. Just a beautiful, beautiful thought. First, we'll talk about the fishing trip. The end to the fishing trip's really, really exciting. I love how Charles described when they were going to Whittier, and they got there. Whittier's just a little tiny community. It was then, it sounds like, but it is today especially. But anyway, when they were going to Whittier and they seen that bridge, but they were wanting to know, like, where's the town? And then Jack explains to them, well, people walk across that if they need to get across the river. And then he explained on further down there was a place for a wagon to cross. It's so hard for us to understand today because we just have multiple ways to go wherever we're going. You know, I can go to town 2 different ways, like main ways, but then I could even make some different ways along those 2 ways if I wanted to. So I could definitely get to town even if there was a blocked area, you know. But interesting to think about in those days that you had to, if you were walking, you could pretty much go anywhere, but you didn't want to walk across a river that was, you know, waist deep or something. You'd be soaking wet, so that's where that bridge come in. Or you could have went on down there to where the wagons forded and rolled up your britchy legs or held up your dress and walked across that way, and you wouldn't have got wet all the way over. So such a different time. Here in Brasstown, just below Clay's, if you're going back towards Murphy, there's where Pap showed me where the island ford was. So when he was a boy on the Hawshaw farm, which seems like today, you're like, well, you just drive down the road. Well, the road wasn't there. So if they wanted to come across, that's where they crossed. If they wanted to come into Brasstown, they crossed right there. If not, they would have had to go way around. It wouldn't have made any sense. But they couldn't go straight to it like you could today. It's just something so neat to think about the way that people had to travel before there were so many roads and so many highways. And then when they get there and they start fishing, it's interesting when before they're fishing and Charles's daddy and Jack are fixing them something to eat and getting everything ready, that Charles and TJ, they go across that swinging bridge. If you've ever walked on a bridge like that, it is kind of spooky, I think, because it sways with you. I'm sure if you walk on it all the time, you get used to the feeling of that. But anyway, they go over there, and then they find that fish. Well, Charles don't really elaborate on that much, but I'm thinking that was somebody else's fish. He called it bank fishing, like a bank fishing line. Pap, now things have changed today. If you can still set trot lines in some areas, you got to worry about the rules and regulations though, and make sure. I think you can still set them here, but you have to put your information on them. You have to, like when I was a girl, Pap would do that, and that wasn't, you didn't have to put your name and your information on it like you do today. And Pap called them trot lines. So he would set trot lines along the river, and then he'd go back, him and Steve would, and they'd go back and check them. Him and Matt did that a lot. They'd go back and check, and maybe they'd caught, 3 or 4 fish. Maybe it was a carp or a hogsucker or something that we wouldn't eat, and they'd turn it loose. But if he'd caught something that we would eat, they'd bring it home and we'd eat it. But again, each area probably has different rules and regulations about that. But the way Charles describes that, I'm pretty sure him and TJ just got somebody else's fish, which is kind of humorous all these years later, but might not have been to the person. They may have thought that the fish, like the line, just got pulled in if they had caught something, because it would have all been gone. Or maybe they thought somebody took it. I'm not sure. And then we get to the part about the other 2 men there that showed up, that decided they would fish with them, and then the game warden come, and they kind of give him, they're arguing with him about the fishing license. And today that just seems so bizarre to us, but again, that was just such a different time, and that would have been in the time when licenses for fishing or hunting just come about. It was a new thing. So people that had never had to worry about that, all of a sudden they were required to buy a license, and they rebelled against it. And I can kind of understand why, because you'd be like, well, I've always done this, and I'm feeding my family. How could you charge me for that? Anyway, so that part's interesting and really comical to me. You can see Charles's wit again, is that when the game warden does come back, and of course they've done and left, and it says plainly they went down the river, that's where they lived. Charles's daddy tells the warden and the 2 men they went up the river, so he's sending them in the wrong direction for sure. That's interesting. Comical again all these years later. So then we get to the wonderful Christmas story that Charles shared with us. That very first opening part, he talks about chinky pins. So chinky pins grew throughout the Appalachian Mountains. They've kind of went the way of the chestnuts, and they're similar to a chestnut in that is what they look like. They kind of look like a miniature chestnut. They have burrs like that, pokey burrs, but when you open them up, there's like 4 little nuts in there that look just like miniature little chestnuts. And they used to be plentiful, but it was not a big tree like the chestnuts that Charles told us about. It was not a big tree like that. It was a smaller, kind of a bushy tree. And they were so plentiful, though, and people ate them, and people used them like this, like Charles is talking about. I'm sure people fed them to their animals, too. I'm sure animals ate them, just like they do acorns and stuff. But I love the chinky pins. I've only seen one time. My friend Ken Roper had one, and truthfully, I'm not sure if it was a native chinky pin or if his daddy planted it, or if he just got it somewhere and planted it up in Topton, North Carolina. Now, my good friend Sonny Rickard told me that he had some, and he said he'd give me one, but I never did go get it. So that's on me, not on Sonny, but I need to. Anyway, but when I was a little girl, people always would talk about my eyes being really, really dark. They're real dark. They're pretty much black. And Granny's are like that. That's where me and Steve and Paul all have Granny's eyes. Pap had green eyes. His eyes were green, but none of us have green eyes. Just me and Paul and Steve all have Granny's eyes. They're really, really dark. And people would tell me that I have chinky pin eyes. They would, everywhere I went, somebody'd say, oh, she's a cute little girl. She's got chinky pin eyes. Well, you don't hear that as much today because, like, the chestnuts are gone, the chinky pins are gone, and not many people know what they are, so they couldn't compare your eyes to the chinky pins. One of those things that's kind of gone from the language just because it's gone. Then Charles and TJ get to go get the tree. That's really fun too. Now, a lot of people ask us in our videos why we don't just go to the woods. We have all these woods. Why don't we just go to the woods and get a Christmas tree? Well, we've done that in the past. When I was growing up, that's always what we did with Granny and Pap. And until we got to a point where, for a while, Granny had a artificial one. She just has a little one now, artificial. But at some point, she got one at the flea market or something, and we had an artificial tree. But Pap and us would all tromp through the woods, and we'd get one. That's what we do. Now, the reason me and Matt don't do that, we have done it to, not for our main Christmas tree, but like to put in the kitchen, or maybe the girls put one in their room or something like that, is because mostly what we have, Charles was talking about those spruce trees and all that, mostly what we have are white pines. Well, if you're not familiar with white pines, they have sparse limbs, not many, and their limbs are very flimsy. You put an ornament on it and the whole limb falls down and the ornament falls off if it's a heavy one. So they're not the best trees if you like to really decorate and put lights and put ornaments. They're just not that good of a tree for that kind of decorating. If you wanted to do something really, really simple, they'd be fine. But like all the ornaments I have that I dearly love and put on every year, it just wouldn't work with a white pine. Just wouldn't work at all. So that's why we don't go like TJ and Charles was doing and go into the woods. Now, Granny has a great story about the year that her mama, Gazzy, went to the woods to find a Christmas tree, and instead she found a holly tree, and she chopped down the holly tree, Granny tells, and it had red berries on it, so it was already decorated. I imagine it was very pokey, though, too, very pokey, but it's a great memory for Granny. And then the popcorn that Charles talks about. Now, you've all, probably like me, you've heard that your whole life, people stringing popcorn. Maybe you've even done it. I have. One year, I don't know, it's probably like 2012 or something like that. I wasn't sad, I wasn't depressed, nothing like that. I just thought, I just don't want to get all my Christmas stuff out this year. I just want to do something real simple. And so me and Matt did go. We went in that holler right over there, and we found a Christmas tree, a white pine, and we brought it back. And I didn't get out any of my ornaments. We made paper, me and the girls, we made paper snowflakes, like just out of paper, and stuck them on it. I made some sweet gum balls, dipped them in flour, glue and flour, and put those on it. And then we strung popcorn, and we put popcorn on it. I think we made like those same snowflakes. We made them out of red paper too, and put red. And it was a beautiful tree. It was really, and we put white lights on it, one strand of white lights. And I don't know why that year I just wanted to do that. Maybe someday I'll go back to doing that. That's the only time I've ever done it since me and Matt's been married. And again, I wasn't depressed or sad. I just wanted to do something totally different, and we did, and enjoyed it. But that's the only time I've ever strung popcorn. And interesting, though, that Charles talks about stringing it and dyeing it. I love it that they dyed it. The red from the pokeberry, the green from the bark, and then the brown from the black walnuts. That's just amazing. I love that. It is interesting, too, thinking about the difference in just times changing, and of course things getting better and easier on people. We live in the land of plenty. But how he describes that they just didn't wear socks. They just didn't wear socks. Can you imagine how cold their ankles? I'm sitting out here and it's kind of cold today. It's about 40. And can you imagine how cold their ankles was, especially girls, which their dresses were longer. And maybe they wore stockings, like full stockings. I don't know. I don't think so, because Charles would have probably mentioned it. Or maybe he was just talking about him and TJ, that they didn't wear socks. But that's different. Something that's totally changed, too. I like when he talks about the opening the presents, how he says the littlest one went first. Several years ago, one of my friends told me that in their family, the way they always did it is they did it when they opened presents on Christmas morning, they did it from the oldest to the youngest, and everybody waited patiently. Like when I was young, we just all opened presents, and I was opening mine, Paul's opening his, Granny's opening hers, Pap was opening his, Steve was opening his. But my friend told me that they did it one at a time, and everybody paid attention, and that way everybody got to kind of see what they got, but also, like if you had got somebody a gift, then you got to see their expression. So after they told me that, we started doing that, so that's how we do it. So Matt goes first, then me, then Austin, he's older than the girls, then Katie, then Corey, because Katie's a whole 2 minutes older, and now we'll have to add the boys to that. But I really love that, doing it like that a little bit at a time, just because you can enjoy it more and laugh, and everybody gets to see, and it's just, I love it. So I'm glad that my friend told me that, and we do it. But Charles reminded me of it there. And then the very last paragraph, I'm going to read it again. Wasn't it great? It would be another year before this would take place again. We were all happy. No one was sick. We had enough to eat. And most of all, we loved each other. We were thankful for what we had during these hard times. In the early 1930s, a lot of people had less than we did. Of course, that was in those Depression years. And even without the Depression, like I said, today we live in the land of plenty. Now, that's not to say that there's not people that suffer, that are poor, that do without. I understand that. But overall, in America, we live in the land of plenty compared to how hard it was when Charles was a boy, when my daddy was a boy, when your parents and grandparents were children. It's just a different time. We have a much, much easier life. But still, there's so much for us to be thankful for, especially when you think about those things that Charles listed. Everyone was well, and they loved each other. I wish everyone could have a good family like that. That would be my prayer for the world, and something I really believe we should instill in our children, that's the greatest thing you can do is to grow up and have a good family. You've heard me say that before, and lots of people don't have that, and it's through no fault of their own. They were born into a family that didn't work. But I think that's a goal we could have for future generations, because it does make life so much better. So I hope you enjoyed hearing the rest of Charles's fishing story. I hope you enjoyed the first Christmas story. So for the next few weeks, we'll be reading little Christmas stories, not necessarily from Charles, though. We'll take a break on the Panther on Cold Mountain and other stories, and we'll come back to that once Christmas is over. So be sure to let me know what you thought about Charles's stories today, and be sure to drop back by next Friday for another Christmas story.